Okay, today we're going to start looking at different types of tissues. So this is chapter 5. Last chapter we talked about the fact that cells build tissues. So now we're going to look at some of these specific kinds of tissues. Similar types of cells are arranged in tissues that provide a certain function. So heart tissue has a specific function. Skeletal tissue has a specific function. Cells of different tissues, so your heart cells and skeletal cells, are structured differently because they have different functions. Obviously, the function of your skeleton, your bone, is a lot different than the function of your heart. Therefore, they're built differently. The tissues of the human body, there's 4 main types. Epithelial, and you might hear this like on CSI and things like that. We're going to collect epithelials. Epithelial tissue, basically skin and protective coverings. So your skin is an epithelial tissue. Also, there's epithelial tissue that covers and protects a lot of your organs. Connective tissue is going to bind things, connect things together. Also, dense connective tissue will give support. It can be a fairly rigid tissue. Muscular tissue is very important for body movement. It has a specific function. And then nervous tissue, its function is to conduct impulses. So it's going to pick up information. It's going to relay information. So it conducts impulses, it controls a lot of your body activities and coordinates what goes on. So in your book there is this table that you can look at and see some of the specific characteristics that go with it. So epithelial, here's its job, here's where it's found, here's some distinguishing characteristics. Epithelial lacks blood vessels. If I scratch on the top of my skin, I do not bleed because I'm just peeling off layers of cells. If I get into my deep tissue, then I will hit a blood vessel. And we'll look at those characteristics as we look at each individual type of tissue. But this is a good table to go back and look at and review. So if we look specifically at epithelial tissues, they are widespread throughout the body. Your skin is your body's largest organ, so obviously these are very common. It covers organs, it lines body cavities, hollow organs, and it's your skin tissue. Epithelial tissues are going to have a basement. Think basement in the bottom. So basement membrane is going to be at the bottom. They anchor the tissue. And that basement membrane is made up of tightly packed cells, so they're very close together. There's very little intercellular. Intercellular means in between. So in between these cells, there's not very much. Very little material in between the cells. They generally lack blood vessels. And readily divide means they divide very quickly, very easily. Every time you take a shower, you lose thousands of skin cells. Those skin cells divide quickly and come back. The older you get, the cells don't divide quite as quickly, which deals with the aging process of skin. So basement's at the bottom. Epithelial tissue will also have a free apical surface, so an outside surface that's going to be exposed to the outside of the skin or to the outside of the organ or to an open space or cavity. So basement, bottom, free, top. The job of epithelial tissues is to protect. So in the instance of your skin, it basically protects everything inside of your skin. The lining of an organ, it's going to protect your organs. Secretion, so releasing of things, absorbing things, and excretion, getting rid of wastes. Classification, this will become very important in remembering the names of the cells and what they do. So shape, squamous means squashed or flat. So if I see squamous, that means flat cell. It's not very thick, it's flat. Cuboidal means that it's shaped like a cube. So it's going to have a cube shape. And then columnar means that it's going to be a taller cell, more like a column. And then the other part of the name, we're going to look at layers. So if I say simple squamous, simple means one layer of flat cells. Simple squamous, single layer flat cells. Stratified means lots of layers or more than one layers. So if I say stratified squamous, lots of layers of flat cells. Stratified cuboidal, lots of layers of cube-shaped cells. So if I know the name, I can figure out what it looks like. Free surfaces, so the outside surface a lot of times will be modified. They might have something on it. So that free surface can have cilia, which are little hair-like projections, like on a sperm cell, used for movement. Microvilli are little extensions, and these might be found like in your digestive system to help move things. So the free surface of an epithelial cell might have some specific little organs that have a specific function. So we'll look at the first type of epithelial cell, simple squamous. One layer, flat. So simple squamous is made up of a single layer of thin, flattened cells. The name tells me that. Because it's thin, it's flat, it's made for diffusion. Stuff can move across it very, very easily because it's so thin. It functions in exchange of gases. So in the alveoli of the lungs, there is a simple squamous. So carbon dioxide can move through, oxygen can move through. It also lines blood and lymph vessels, especially your tiny little capillaries, where things are exchanged in your blood system. So simple squamous, single layer, flat. It allows for things to move through it very easily. And there's just a picture, lots of different pictures. Here's a diagram. This would be looking at it straight underneath, so a horizontal cut underneath the microscope. And this would be a sagittal cut, so I'm looking at it from the side. So if I look at this, the free tissue is going to be on the top. The basement membrane is going to be on the bottom. And here's a single layer of flat cells. So here, if I look at a sagittal cut, this here is my simple squamous layer. Just this thin layer of cells at the top. The basement is this line that you'll be able to see at the bottom, and then there's going to be connective tissue underneath it. Simple cuboidal, one layer, cube shaped. Nucleus is usually right in the middle of these cubes. If I have something simple cuboidal, its function typically is to secrete or absorb something. Kidneys probably the most common. If you're looking at a simple cuboidal cell, most examples will be your kidneys. Your kidneys are filters. They have to absorb, secrete a lot, so they are filled with these type of tissue. Secretion in glands, and then it also covers the ovaries. So that cuboidal epithelium is going to cover the ovaries. picture here, you can see they're not so flat. They almost look like a square or a cube. Nucleus is typically right in the center. Basement membrane is going to be at the bottom. So this would be a picture of your kidneys. So this lumen, new term, lumen means like an opening on the inside. So the free surface is right here because it faces the opening. The free surface is the top. The basement is going to lie here along the bottom, and then here's this layer of my cube-shaped cells. Simple columnar, single layer, column-shaped, elongated, they're longer cells. The nuclei in these are usually located towards the bottom. They're not found in the middle. Non-ciliated, so they don't have cilia at the top. Their free surface does not have a cilia. Your uterus, your stomach, intestines, its job is to protect. It's going to secrete digestive fluids, and it's going to absorb nutrients. Ciliated, so a columnar epithelial that has cilia on it is going to be found in your uterine tubes because those cilia are going to help to move the egg as it enters towards the uterus. In the intestines, the open part or the free top part is going to have microvilli, which are little tiny extensions. And because they're extensions of the cell, they increase the surface area, which allows your intestine to absorb more. It increases the surface area, allowing more digested materials to be absorbed. Mucus secreting goblet cells, we'll look at some diagrams and talk about them specifically. Their job is to secrete something, typically some kind of mucus, and they are specifically found in columnar cells. So here's a picture. This one would be like in your intestine, because these little bumps are the little microvilli, all the little extensions of that cell. So here's one long cell. Here's the nucleus towards the bottom. Here's the free surface. This would be a goblet cell that's going to release mucus. And like I said, we'll look more at those. That's probably about all I want to point out. So notice how they're long. When you look at them under a microscope, basically you're going to see the nuclei. You might not actually see the outline of the cell specifically. New one, pseudo-stratified columnar. So columnar means long, stratified means lots of layers, and pseudo means different. So these cells appear to be layered because their nucleus is kind of spread out all over, but they're not. They look layered because their nuclei are not uniform. Cilia might be present, goblet cells might be present, very common in your respiratory tubes. This is the most common place that you're going to find a pseudo-stratified columnar. So if I look at this picture, it looks layered because here's my nucleus, here's the nucleus, they're not in nice, nice organized layers like the others. Here, because it's in your respiratory system, there are cilia, and you can see those here too, on the free space. That cilia helps to move particles through your respiratory system so that they're not stuck there, they don't interfere. And here I can see, here's a long cell, here's a long cell. This one's a little narrower here, nucleus at the top, nucleus at the bottom. So they're not organized quite as neatly as some of your other cells. And I will stop there for a moment.